Thank you so much for showing up. And for those of you that are online and are watching on Facebook or wherever you are, thank you for showing up and supporting and bringing your positive energy and your love to this community. Wow. So my talk today is entitled Answered Prayer. Because we're feeling as if we've got some answered prayers, right? We've already heard Reverend David is coming next week. Wow. November starts, and we don't have to wonder who's going to show up on Sunday because we know that it will be our new minister. How exciting. So we're on the threshold, right? We're on the brink of something new. Years from now, we'll look back on this and go, wow, I remember that. I remember that anticipation. I remember that excitement that I felt in my heart. I could hardly wait to turn the page. It's like when you want to read ahead in a book that's so thrilling and you want to find out what's going to happen next. Well, as I was preparing this talk, I often hear songs in my head. You know, music speaks to me so powerfully, like Rachel's song just did. But last night, I was hearing Reverend Michael Gott. Any of you know Reverend Michael, the minister at Unity of Houston now, former CSL minister, a big fan favorite in the Dallas area. And what I was hearing was, "You must move in the direction of your dreams." That song kept coming up to me. So, in fact, I went online and pulled it up. I have all of his CDs, but you know, sometimes it's just quicker and easier to pull it up. And he was singing, "You must move in the direction of your dreams and act as if they'd already come true. Even when there is no hope, or so it seems, move in the direction of your dreams." Well, we are in movement. We are in process. And we've had a lot of metaphors and metaphysical teachings from all the various speakers that have been here. But thinking back to what Reverend David shared with us, he talked to us about the river. Remember the river metaphor? And going with the flow and being in the moment and continuing to stay aligned with Source through the power of prayer, through our commitment and our perseverance, our strength, our courage, those wonderful unity powers or abilities that we talk about. So as I'm thinking about us on this river and being together, I kept going back to this vision of us rowing together. You all like to row? Rowing together in harmony and in synchrony with all our strength, pulling together as a team. And that's what you've had to do. Many different people from this community have shown up, have lent their strength and their time and their energy and their focus to make this happen. Reverend Doug, he also used a metaphor of a journey a couple of different times. He brought his grandmother's suitcase in, remember, and he'd open it up on the stand and he'd start pulling things out. He gave us a compass and he talked to us about what we were going to take along and how we could navigate this uncharted territory. And here we are, finding and remembering today all those treasures that we've discovered within ourselves. So that brings me to a story that really illustrates this whole point so vividly. And it's a story about the most famous journey in U.S. history. And some of you may already be thinking, who could that be? Lewis and Clark. Have you seen those Ken Burns documentaries of Lewis and Clark? Welcome, come on in. I'm so happy people are just keeping on coming in. Yay, I love it. Well, Lewis and Clark, Meriwether Lewis and William Clark, they were trying to explore the West, and they were going to places that nobody had ever been before. And they had what they called their Corps of Discovery. And they had a black guide, and they had Native Americans working with them, and all these people that had trained together and worked together. And they finally arrived at the Great Falls of Missouri. And Lewis said it was the most beautiful sight he'd ever beheld when they first got there. And these falls, they were 900 feet wide and 80 feet high. It was just incredible. And there was this huge rainbow that appeared as if a sign from God or source. And they knew that it was validation, that they were on the right path. Don't we sometimes look for some sign or some inner idea or reflection that says, yes, you are on your right path? Well, they saw the falls, and they had gotten these explicit details in stories because they couldn't look it up on Google Maps like we can. And they had heard from their Native American friends that that's what they were supposed to look to. And they knew that they had made the right choice when they took the fork. But what they didn't know, as Lewis began to go on and scout out where they were, is that there were 4 additional falls. They had no idea. They wound up having to travel 18 miles out of their way. Now, I don't know how much that sounds like to you, but in these rugged conditions, and they were on the water, right? They had to go 18 miles out of the way. So part of the story, and what they call it, is the Great Falls Portage. And I didn't know before I started studying about this what portage meant. But it's when you have to pick up your goods or your canoe, your boat, whatever it is, and you have to transport them over land because you can't get it all over the water. So here's this expedition party, and they're burying some of their goods, their biggest boat they buried, and they took what they could, and they tried to find a way to keep going, like we do when we encounter obstacles. Sometimes we have to take another route. You know, if we're on Waze, it'll get us off and it'll help us navigate, and it's sometimes a little daunting and scary. But imagine what these men and women felt as they faced this obstacle. So they were carrying their equipment, or they were dragging them along. They tried to build these makeshift wagons. And it was so treacherous that even when the winds were strong, they tried to use their sails in an innovative way to help them make better progress with the wind helping carry them on foot. But it was so contentious. Everything was working against them. They had gnats, they had mosquitoes, and you can just imagine. We have those issues. I was frustrated with all the mosquitoes in Dallas this summer, but they were constantly fighting that. They were also in the midst of all these prickly pear cactuses. Now, I don't know about you, but one time on a trip with my parents, I got out of the car in Salt Lake City around the lake, and I got out barefoot, and I got all these little cactus hairs in my feet, and they were painful. They're often referred to as spines. They were dealing with all of that, and it was so bad that the travelers, the team, they were having to change their moccasins every 2 days because they were wearing out. But they persevered. They had intense summer heat on some days, and other days they had severe thunderstorms. And they reported that the hail would come down at times the size of eggs. So they're dealing with all the elements and all the unknown. They had no idea what would ultimately happen. And beyond that, they had rattlesnakes. And on a much larger scale, grizzly bears to contend with. So it kind of feels daunting and overwhelming, but after a month of this grueling journey and all this hard labor, they made it. They made it through. They were on the other side of the falls, and they could celebrate, and they could get back to work, building new boats and getting everything back together. They were back on their journey on the Missouri River, July 15th of 1805. And they knew they were behind schedule. Ever have that feeling where you know that you've gotten off track and it's like, I'm so far behind. How am I ever going to catch up? But they were just relieved and happy to be on the other side of the falls. Now, all they had to do was find horses and make it over the Rocky Mountains. They didn't know what lay ahead, and we don't really either. We keep trusting and believing and knowing that we're up for the task, that we're going to stay the course, that we're going to stay committed, stay strong, and stay faith-filled. So I know that you've encountered difficult journeys as well, and that there have been times where you felt discouraged and as if even you didn't have what it took to keep going. But there's an African proverb I want to share that keeps with this water metaphor, which says, "Smooth seas do not make skilled sailors." Smooth seas do not make skilled sailors. And if everything were beautiful every day and we didn't have to challenge ourselves or call for some more of that innate potential that we all have, how would we evolve? How would we develop? How would we see the magnificence in ourselves and in those around us? So what we face here now and moving forward is opportunity, yes. But there's still going to be those dichotomies that we see, that we feel, that we experience. There may be moments of clarity, but there may be also moments of confusion, right? There may be moments of composure where you're just gliding along, rowing along. And then there may be those moments of consternation where you're like pulling your hair out. Oh no, what's going on? I didn't anticipate that. But we keep calling forth that divine wisdom, that divine faith and power to help us navigate these obstacles. Because we know that we're not home free, are we? It's not like, oh, they're smooth sailing. We're never going to have any other bumps in the road, right? Does anybody believe that? No, of course you don't. But we know that even when we get pulled in these unexpected directions, that we can continue to persevere and move forward because we are resilient. We built those skills and we continue to enhance those skills. So, answered prayer. Sometimes we get something different than we anticipated, right? Have you ever prayed for patience and then got all sorts of tests about how you could really develop that patience? You know, I think that's where some of that comes from. Be careful what you pray for, because you might not want to have to live through all of that. When I teach self-care, as Janice mentioned, there's different sections and components, and people say, gosh, why is it in the self-care class that all this stuff is happening? You know, these things that I didn't anticipate, all these obstacles. Maybe it's an opportunity to really refine and remember who you are and who you are here to be. So on this journey, what does the Lewis and Clark story suggest to you? How do you envision yourself as a part of this community going forward? Maybe you're just chomping at the bit. You're just ready and eager to go because you can't wait to see what's next. And as I said, we are on that threshold where we're getting ready to cross over. And I personally love that we're starting a new month because isn't that a great time for new understanding? And November and December, that's what we have left of 2022. November and December are two of my favorite months because at first November we get a chance to live in gratitude, to feel grateful, to be in appreciation. And then in December, it's a time of rebirth. It's a time of celebrating. It's a time of giving and receiving and being a part of everything that's holy. So your discernment in this process as you continue to take those steps is key. Personally, I'm ecstatic about David coming back. And if you're watching Reverend David, I can't wait to give you another great big hug when you arrive. David and I have been together through a journey of our own. We've been a part of a team called Unity Texas, and then it was later renamed Together in Unity. And we put together with Reverend Steve Colliday prayer chaplain retreats and gatherings for all the different groups and Unity churches in and around Texas. We also served on the Unity South Central Region Board together for a number of years. And we had, you all that have served on a board, you know what it's like. It's not all smooth sailing, is it? It's not all, peace, love, hugs, fun. There's some tension. There can be some conflict that arises or some discernment, some tough choices, because there's a responsibility inherent in these positions. So we've planned new initiatives. We've worked through issues. We've celebrated together. We've cried together. We've laughed together. We have hiked in Rocky Mountain National Park together. At the site of one of our retreats was nearby, and we took the opportunity at the end to, some of us went hiking on those beautiful trails. So there's a lot of anticipation that I have. I know that I'm all in. You can count me in. I will be here. I will be a part of this community as we move forward. Yay! So how do we keep our unity? How do we maintain that flow despite what we know are going to continue to be some changes of various kinds? We're in a world where change is rapid pace, right? Not like it was in Lewis and Clark's day. Things change second to second. You can buy something new and next week it'll practically be outdated. There'll be a new version. We're inundated with information and we're making choices. Now, anytime that you go through change, there are two kinds of stress. One we are most familiar with, and that's distress. We're distressed when things happen we don't like. When we get a call from our doctor telling us we need to have more tests done. We're distressed when somebody that we love moves away, or there's an emergency, or we have a financial setback, or we have a tornado or a hurricane or flooding or all the weather kind of events that we've been contending with. And just living in this contentiousness, right? November also brings another election, and with that comes stress. But there's the good kind also, eustress, E-U-S-T-R-E-S-S. Those are the things we choose. Like when we choose to take a new job, or when we get in a new relationship, or we buy a new home, or we celebrate the birth of a grandchild, or we look forward to moving into a new community of whatever kind. Those are all the things that we say yes to, like choosing a new senior minister. And yet that brings feelings associated with it too. Some of you know that my background's mental health, and I do trainings every week, mostly virtually. Thank you to the virtual world to allow us to make that happen, on the discomfort and the anxiety and the depression and all the issues that people are confronting in our world right now. And so I just want to remind you to be tender and gentle with yourself and with each other, because when things change, it can get a little messy, even with the most high level of anticipation. I mean, when Russ and I got married, it was a joyous day. We were on the ocean. It was sunny most of the day. It did rain during our ceremony for part of it, but that didn't mean that it's been absolutely perfectly smooth sailing ever since. Things happen, right? So I want to remind you, first, a quote from Charles Fillmore, our Unity co-founder. I mostly always quote Myrtle, and I think I've shared many, many Myrtle quotes and other women in unity quotes when I've been here, but I wanted to bring one from Charles Fillmore today to you because it relates to harmony, and I think that we are going to need to stay harmonious within ourselves as well as harmonious with those around us. Charles said, "We must faithfully and persistently deny the appearance of that which seems to be inharmonious, and silently and faithfully affirm the omnipresent peace, love, and harmony that we want to see manifested." That's from his book, Atom Smashing Power of the Mind. Atom Smashing Power of the Mind. I don't know if your bookstore's back reopened. You can find it online. Faithfully and persistently deny the appearance of that which seems to be inharmonious, and then silently and faithfully affirm the omnipresent peace, love, and harmony. And that ties into a quote from the Bible, from 1 Peter 3, verses 8, who in that verse, the message is all about Jesus talking about living in harmony with one another. In some Bible interpretations, it says brothers, and others it says brethren, and others it says different things. But the core message is be like-minded, be compassionate, be sympathetic, be kind, and love one another, and be humble yourselves. I know that you all have demonstrated that time and time again, but it's important to remember that we are still in transition. Another resource that I want to mention is a book by a Unity minister, Reverend Robert Brummett, Brumet, and it's called Finding Yourself in Transition. And you can say that any number of ways. You can say, like, finding myself in transition, or finding myself in transition. It has a lot of different nuances, but the key aspect of it is that we are always in these transitions. He uses a lot of water metaphors too, and he talks about when we are in those transitions, sometimes it can feel like we're on whitewater rapids. Now, I haven't ever done that. Have any of you? Okay, Denise, whitewater rapids. It's thrilling, it's exciting, and it's also scary and daunting. So know that some feelings are going to come up. There's probably some unresolved grief in this room right now. I know there is for me. I had 2 very significant people in my life that passed away this year. And I don't think I've fully acknowledged and allowed myself to really feel into it. And sometimes when another transition occurs, those feelings are reawakened, they're reactivated. So be gentle. C.S. Lewis said this, that grief is like a long valley, a winding valley, where along any bend may reveal a totally new landscape. So it's a process, right? Kind of like Lewis and Clark, this journey, and these metaphors keep coming back, weaving and winding. So how can you create harmony inside yourself? How can you be in the meditative place where you can stay attuned to what is yours to do. And since we're in November almost, how about let's look at Thessalonians, 1 Thessalonians chapter 5, verses 16 through 18. Rejoice always, pray without ceasing, give thanks in all circumstances, for this is the will of God. Continue to give thanks for whatever shows up, okay? I'm having this reaction today. I'm thankful. I'm learning something new. I'm leaning into an aspect of who I am. Gratitude, 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 rebirth and transformation. So stay open to the mystery and the treasure that you're experiencing. Know that you're on purpose. And this community is on purpose. Everything has come together for good. And like Lewis and Clark's journey of discovery, that's going to reveal new and exciting opportunities for all of us in this room. But you have to practice self-care. November and December are also the two busiest times of the year, the months that are filled with obligations and commitments. Plus, as we've heard, we're going to get an extra hour, but it's going to be getting dark earlier, and things change in that way too. So you are going to see, if you notice, reminders of how tenacious you are, how good you are at juggling, and how capable you are discovering more about yourself than ever. But I want to invite you, as we wind up, to take time with these two cards. I told several of you that I spared no expense in giving you a little gift this morning. One pink card, this is the release card, and one green card, this is the ignite card. And so I'm going to suggest that you create a burning bowl activity. I know it's not New Year, but it's going to be a new month. I do burning bowls pretty much every month. Once a year is not enough for me. So what you might release: criticism of yourself or others, comparisons, cattiness. Triangulation happens in spiritual communities just like it happens in work environments. And any financial, emotional, or physical, emotional, or financial withholding. But you know this, you've been through burning bowls before. Create your own list and find a safe way to shred this, burn this, whatever makes sense to you. Cut it up into little tiny pieces and release it. But then you're not going to stop there. You're going to ignite with your green card. That's what we want to go into and forward with. That's what we want to create. That can be your harmonious thoughts and beliefs. That can be life-affirming self-care activities. That can be nurturing your physical, emotional, and spiritual connections. That can be loving, compassionate focus on oneness. And absolutely, it will include time in meditation, time in prayer, time in nature, and nurturing you as the magnificent person that you are. So when I come back next time, please give me some feedback about your process of releasing and igniting. And may it be the impetus for a magnificent journey over that threshold into this new place that we are moving as unity on Greenville. Namaste.